Greetings to you faithful friends. I do not have as much, I'm not as much prepared. Well, I don't have as much material prepared this week as is usual. And Stephen's been on a commission all week, so I have no new pictures. Let's see if I got everything right here. So I really need, there'll be just me, and one voice is terrible. So you can raise your, you can find that chat button. I know you know how to do that, and I'll try to watch the chat. But please raise your hand and talk to me before we get going here. Maybe you got some new questions other than what I've already got put in and put together. And I forgot to turn my phone button off. Who's that? Somebody had their hand up and then it's gone. Oh, Margie, go ahead, Margie. Turn your microphone on. Talk to me. You there, Margie?
You okay? Hi.
There you go. Phyllis, you'll be next.
Hi.
Okay.
Hi. Tomorrow at from 9 to 11 at the community center in Royal Oak, they're having the plant exchange. I think that's what it's called. Yeah, you dig up your plants, and then how many you bring in, you could take that many out. It's tomorrow at the community center.
And the community center is on Crooks Road by north of 13 or
it's on actually Marias Road off of 13.
Right,
but it's behind the Royal Oak High School.
Okay, so behind the high school. Good. Yeah, swapping plants is great, although boy, what a dry week to be doing it. Thanks, Margie.
Yeah, you get some. I got some really nice stuff before. Yeah,
you do have to know, because there tend to be a lot of things at plant swaps that grow prolifically, and people bring those, and if you don't,
they're like, oh, here, take my weeds.
Yeah.
No, I went to the I was in the perimeter garden today at the community garden in Royal Oak with my friend Chris. We're the co-chair people of the perimeter garden, and we dug out a bunch of plants to exchange.
And good, because there's always the gardens are always producing extra plants. Always. Okay, thank you. Well, let's see.
You're welcome.
Okay.
See ya.
Phyllis, go ahead, turn your microphone on and tell us what you got. Phyllis, we rely on you to go into actually the bottom of your screen. You should, if you go down to the bottom of your screen and kind of hover your mouse or your finger down there, depending on whether you got a touchpad or not, these bars should pop up somewhere, and you just click this microphone so that it's not got a red bar by it, and then you can talk. Okay, Margie, you're gonna have to put your hand down. So this is my my first solo Free4All Friday. Steve was out of commission this week. He's still under the weather, so I told him to stay away. Don't sneeze and cough at our screen. Sonia is actually in town, but she's babysitting her nieces and nephew, which I would be doing if Sonia wasn't in town. So it's nice that she's there. They really love and get around with her. So we've got two hands raised. Phyllis, you're going to need to find your microphone and click it, because I can't turn it on from here. I can only ask you to turn it on. Barb, another Barb. We got two Barbs here. It's funny how some names just come around and go around. I met a young Janet this week, and for 30 years or so, a little longer than that, Steve's been Santa at various places at Christmas, and he keeps track of kids for me. And sometimes he'll sit with 200 kids will come during the period of time that he's there. So he's seen a lot of kids. No Janets. He said, oh, the name went away. But this week I met a 30-year-old Janet. You can put things in the chat. Make sure they say to everyone, especially tonight, because I'm watching the chat myself, or I'm going to try to watch the chat myself. And if you put it to just me, I have to toggle too many switches to be able to get to it. But because I'm the only one talking tonight, it would be nice if you go ahead and raise your hand and you can talk from there. Margie, you need to put your hand down so somebody else can get it, unless you've got something else to say. When you chat, when you put things into chat to everyone, and remember, don't hit return until you're done with your question. if you're a typist and you're used to hitting return, your question will get broken up into 3 pieces and I'll have to try to paste it back together to see what's up. Because I had no new pictures today, usually each week Steve's out taking pictures somewhere and I get to look at, well, actually I don't get to look at, I ask him, give me some pictures to use for question fields for those things that we just want to put up. And I didn't have any new ones this week. I'm kind of glad I didn't have any new ones though. It's been so dry for several weeks that the plants are hanging out there, just waiting for a little bit of moisture. One of the main things that I've been doing is, when I get a chance this week, is going out with gallon jugs of water and pouring them on the plants that I moved around so that those that have too little root can recover. So if you've got questions, this is the time to bring them up, or if neat things have happened in your garden this week, now's the time to tell people about it. Oh, Nancy, go ahead.
Hi, Janet.
Hi, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing fine.
This summer we had a blackberry lily volunteer in our garden.
Really? Yeah,
And
well, I do go by seed. Somebody must have one someplace here, huh?
I don't know. I guess so, but it's absolutely beautiful. I have no experience with blackberry lilies. I didn't know it would have so many blooms on just the one plant.
Isn't it funny? Isn't it cool that after it blooms, the petals kind of twist all up together? And
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So now we have pods. We have about 6 pods, and I want to know, what do I do now with them? How can I?
The pods are probably still green, right?
They're still green. Mhm.
Along about middle of October, as they turn brown, they'll split open, which is when they look like black berries hanging on the pod, and it can be quite attractive. At that point or shortly before, you can just collect the pods and collect the seeds. I had one garden that I took care of, and the people there were just fascinated with blackberry lilies. They always had little jars of blackberry lily seeds to give out to friends. And they do grow very quickly. They'll bloom the first year from seed. I think you've seen that. And that's pretty interesting that you let it come up. It's kind of funny how gardeners will do that. Something will come up and you'll go, not one of the weeds I know, not something I remember planting. So I'm going to watch it for a little while. And you watched it long enough to figure out what it was. That's pretty cool. Is it one of the orangey colored ones?
Yes, it is.
There's a hybrid group. Blackberry lily is Bellum Canda chinensis. There's also a plant called Pardenthopsis that's closely related. And they crossed the two of them and made cross Parden Canda. They call them candy lilies. And they come in all colors, pinks, whites, edges in dark purple and inside in light pink. And you might want, if you liked looking at just the orange ones, you might really like the others too. Generally, the orange ones are going to give you just orange. But if you start with the hybrid mix, then you get quite a few different colors that's coming up in seed.
So once the excuse me, once the pods break open and you see the seeds, then I can collect the seeds.
Right.
And then when do I plant them? And what kind of light requirements?
You can plant them right away if you want to. You can just put them in the place where you want them to come up and put some mulch on top of them, because they'll come up through a 1/2 inch or inch of mulch when it warms up in the spring. Or you can just keep them inside. I generally keep them in the refrigerator. I just put the envelope or jar with the seeds in it into the refrigerator and keep them there. And then you can sow them in the spring where you want them to come up.
Okay.
What do they need? They don't need light to germinate. They can be covered. And that's why they'll come up through the mulch. I don't think they need much of anything else. They germinate pretty readily, all with just moisture and more.
Should they be in full sun or partial sun?
Blackberry lily grows best in full sun. It stands up straightest on its own. And they are susceptible to iris borer. They're related to the irises. And when you have them in full sun, they tend to be a little bit more sturdy if they get attacked by the iris borer. They don't fall over for that reason. But I've seen them growing in, well, the people that like them so much in Grosse Pointe. I would say, once those maple trees were there, I would say they were getting 4 or 5 hours of sun. They weren't in shade, but they were in part sun, and they were still blooming. Just not, if you say yours bloomed a lot, it had a lot of flowers, then you must have had it in full sun.
Actually, it part sun. Yeah, part sun.
Yep.
It kind of sprang up right at the edge of our Japanese garden.
Uh-huh.
And my friend kept saying, well, don't you want to move it somewhere else? I said, no, I don't dare move it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, they do move easily and they do multiply pretty readily too.
Okay, good.
Let's see, finder, let's find her. Let's see if this works here. I'm going to try to share the whole thing. And since I can't go looking through Steve's and my files of pictures right now, I can, however, show you what Blackberry Lily looks like, because here we are talking in the air and people are saying, what are we talking about? Well, if I go to Google and images, there we go, images. I'm not sure if you're seeing this, but I've got my desktop, I hope, sharing with you. There we go, Bell and Chinensis. Oh, I forgot about Hello Yellow. There's also one that's a bright yellow color. So that's what we're talking about. This is about right here, the total height from ground where the iris-like leaves come up. Iris-like leaves, except that they're stacked, they're tiered. The whole thing might be 3 feet tall. Usually it's more like 2 feet tall.
Okay, we're not seeing anything on the screen.
Oh. Okay, let's see. Let me see if I can do this. Screen share. Hang on. Now that I've got it open, I should be able. There we go. Oh, I had to share Firefox. Okay. There we go. Can you see these?
Oh, there we go. Right.
Okay. So Blackberry Lily is the orange with spots.
Mm-hmm.
But once they crossed it, they could make things like mellow yellow, which is shorter and all yellow. And if I look at I should be able to do this. Come on. If I look at cross, hard, and Canada. There's no images, really. I did mean it. It looks like it. There we go. If you go to hard and Canada, see, look at the colors that they got out of crossing it with a closely related relative. Look at these guys. Aren't they beautiful?
Oh, my goodness.
But you've got to get the pardon Canada that way in order to get those.
Mm-hmm.
You won't get it from just the Blackberry Lily seeds, but very cool plant.
Well, I'm happy with it, and it's going to be an exciting thing.
You know, meeting a new plant is, I don't know, there's something kind of silly about it. I've sometimes walked, oh, I didn't think of this. I have to reopen my chat now. I've often walked up to a plant at, say, a botanical garden and said, you must be gooseneck, or you must be, because it's a plant that I've read about or heard about, and it looks so much like its name or whatever it is that somebody told me about it, that it just stands out. Other times it becomes the big, ooh, Steve, take me good pictures of this and let's see what this is. So we'll make an official start here. Am I still recording? Yes, okay. Welcome to Free4All Friday, where everybody's welcome to come celebrate growing and cultivate problem solving. This is our 19th episode of just opening up on Friday evening so we can talk before the gardening weekend starts. And I am talking to you from gardenA2Z.org. I'm Janet McConovich. Stephen Nicholas under the weather this week, so he won't be here. And you need to talk to me. You need to bring up your questions and tell us what's been going on in your garden this week, because we've been sticking our nose into too few things this week, as I've been making up. Just feeding Steve's birds, just filling the bird feeders takes an hour and a half. I said, Steve, I'm filling in for you here. And we don't have Sonny with us on Fridays. Usually we almost got her this week, but she ended up babysitting for her nieces and nephew. I'm going to be taking you back to our website this week if we get that far and you do not have questions of your own, because every time I go to look things up there, I'm blown away by all the stuff that we put up there already. There's so much stuff up there already, and so much still to go, that I'd like you to make sure that if you need to get an answer right away, some of those things are there on the website. Okay, and go ahead and tell people. People have asked, can I tell my garden club? Tell anybody you want. If we get too many people, we'll increase our contract with Zoom so we can have more people in, because it's a good thing to talk to other gardeners. The more gardeners share what's going on in their garden, the more things other people learn about. These are the topics that I talk to people about, or texted with, or emailed people with this week, and I'll talk about those if you don't have questions. if you've got questions, find that raise your hand control and put your hand up so that you can talk. Michelle wants to talk. Go ahead, Michelle.
Okay, I have a Deutzia, the small one, not the
Like-
standard,
Like Nico,
And-
maybe we'll kind
yeah,
of ground cover.
the Nico, yeah. And I have three bushes, and one of them is looking pretty sad, and I figured that it could be just cut down and start again. But I know that I would lose the blooms if I did it right now.
What is it that you're gonna cut all the way down? Oh, your Deutzia, yeah, you'll lose the blooms, but you can definitely cut it all the way down. In fact,
It's just looking scraggly, and like one of the three has lost its leaves already, and the other two haven't.
Yeah.
And they're right next to each other. I know it's dry.
right now, where they've lost their leaves already, have you noticed whether they set buds for next year? Because it could be that you're cutting them down when you might just want to turn your head the other way, because if they've set buds in those places, they're going to leaf back out fully on the branch. But if you want to cut them down anyway, go ahead and cut them down. I've cut azaleas in the fall and Deutzias in the fall and Caryopteris in the fall. Spirea.
I'd rather cut them down after they bloom next year, and then just let them take the summer to redo. If I
Yeah,
could.
yeah, do that.
Yeah,
Someone someone emailed this week and said, oh, it was Carol in Illinois. Carol said, I followed your directions to cut my Deutzias. I cut some of the branches hard and I trimmed up the rest of them, and they're so beautiful now. I said, good. She said, I just followed the directions on your website. So it should work for you too. It's always worked for me. They can.
I think they're beyond just taking out a few. I mean, it's been years since I've trimmed them at all. So I think I just want to start over with a new.
Oh yeah, go for it then. Deutzia, they're a member of the honeysuckle family. They put up with all kinds of nonsense without really complaining in any great way. So let's move on and talk about other things that are looking a little scraggly. Diane is in Waterville, that's in northern Ohio, and she said, oh, you're still in a drought too? Yep, not a drop of rain. Ground is so hard that you can't really dig in it much at all. And the plants are definitely doing where the leaves are turning brown, shriveling, and falling off, because the plant can't sustain that many leaves, and it does look awful. Our backyard, we have two Norway maples in the middle of the backyard. One of them is a purple leaf maple, maybe it's a Deborah. And the leaves were already dark to begin with, and when they fall on the ground, it's making the whole backyard look kind of spotted black. It's tough on plants, especially when I'm used to thinking, well, might as well talk about watering while we're doing this. I've always gone by the third week of August, the heat breaks, the third week of September, the fall rains start. But guess what? This is the third week of September, and the fall rains have not started. Is that changing climate? Is that just a strange year? I don't know, but the plants have had long enough now growing season that even if their leaves fall off of them, as long as they've set buds for next year, then they can go, they're going to be fine. They've stored starch, etc. So it's not going to hurt, except that we're not going to get much fall color because there aren't going to be very many healthy leaves left on, not unless the rains really start pretty quickly. It is an interesting thing to watch. Oh, Nancy, I'm sorry about not saying the name of that plant very well. That plant we were talking about and briefly looking at pictures of was blackberry lily, which is called Bellam canda, Bellamcanda, Bellam canda. And there are some hybrids. The orange one is Bellam canda chinensis, and then there were some hybrids, which is called candy lily. And if you looked up candy lily, you can find that one. So watering becomes really important right now, and it might seem strange to go to watering a potted plant, but if you understand watering potted plants, then you can understand some of the more important things about watering when the soil is the way that it is outside now. So let me just go through this with you. If I'm going to water a potted plant perfectly, and I found these things by looking for watering guides on website, watering guides and watering instructions. You wait until the top dries down, which is definitely dried down now. And then you measure how much water you're pouring. In a potted plant, you might have a 2 or 4 cup measuring, but you're going to put in water and see how much water you can put in until some begins to seep out the bottom. As soon as some starts to seep out the bottom, you're going to stop. I'll tell you right now, if it seeps out the bottom immediately because the soil is so dry that it's run on the sides of the pot and come out, you're going to have to submerge that pot in water until bubbles start coming out, because you're going to have to re-soak the root ball to get started. But even when you do that, you're going to stop and wait 20 minutes to see if water is still sitting in the bottom or has it all been reabsorbed. And that's going to tell you how much water your plant needs. And every time you water it, you're going to put in that much water. Some plants have more leaves and they need to be watered more frequently, but the pot can only hold so much water. And so that's what you want to do. And in the winter, or when it's drier or when it's windier, the water needs are going to change. The more water evaporates out of the leaf, the more water needs to come up through the roots. The less water that's used because it's winter and the light is low, then the less water that the roots are going to need. So you change things as you go along. So for instance, that orange strange pot that someone sent to me requires this much water, requires about a cup of water in a 4-cup pot. Now that's typical. Soil, good gardening soil, is 50% air, which is filled halfway with water. So you got 50% mineral matter and then 50% air spaces. And what you want to do is fill half of those air spaces, or a quarter of the total volume, with water. That's perfect for most things. So if you look at the little pot here, it needs just a half shot of water to be a quarter of it. Now think about that outside. When you're out there doing, and this was also came up with the watering guide on ours, is our watering schedule for new plants outside, which is just water on the first day, 2 days later, check the soil, water if it's dry, and you check it the same way you check a potted plant. Sometimes you pick up your potted plants to see if they're getting light, but you can't do that with the soil outside. What you want to do there is put your finger in the ground. If the top inch is warm and dry, it's time to water some more. So if 2 days after planting, if the soil is dry, you water. Then let 3 days go and then you water. Let 4 days go, check it and water. And you're learning as you go how long the soil in that area holds water and how quickly the plant is using it. You do that wait 5 days, then wait 6 days, then wait 7 days. And now you're on a weekly schedule where every Saturday morning you kind of walk around and feel the soil in your garden and decide where to water. Now, if these were pots outside, they'd be an immense pot. A lot of water being taken up by these plants, and at a depth of maybe 8 inches. So I know that 1 inch of water in a good garden soil will seep down 3 to 4 inches, because it's going to fill a quarter of the space. So if I want to water deeper, I want to water 8 inches deep, I need to put on 2 inches of water. How do I know how to do that? If you just walk by with a watering wand and you shower an area with water, a lot of it's going to run off, especially when it's as dry as it is right now. That's why we generally have a watering ring around a new plant, a levee of soil, so that that levee is 1 inch high. We know we can just add water till there's 1 inch of water all through the root zone, and let that water push its way down into the root zone. If you don't have that, then you need to put out some kind of a container. We used to use cat food cans when we were feeding our cats wet food. Put out a cat food can and turn on your sprinkler or your handheld, whatever it is. Put out the cat food can, which is about 1 inch high, and water for as long as it takes to fill that cat food can out in the area that you're sprinkling. But if you don't put that much water on, you're not helping the plant, and you might be only helping the weeds on the top. So you have to water well and deep. And once you get the water in, once you soak it good, then you can come back and soak it again. But think about it in terms of, this is a big area. I probably need to put 50 gallons of water on this. How long does it take you to fill 10 5-gallon buckets? Quite a while of standing there. So I have a neighbor I've been watching, and he comes out and he waters things and he just kind of slushes the top. their impatiens, and because while he's watering, it cools off, the impatiens leaves come back up, but no sooner does he finish just sprinkling the top, then they get hot again and haven't got any water, and they wilt again. So water to actually make the soil get wet. That's our calendar that we put in to say how to take care of the plant. And how does that work in with the fall is best for planting that we were talking about before? It's still better for planting than spring because there will be fall rains at some point in this part of the continent. There are places that are definitely dry this time of year. Mediterranean climates like California tend to dry out at certain times of the year, but we will get water, and that means that the roots that are in the ground by the beginning of fall can grow. They can take in water, they can use the starches that are being sent down to them by the leaves as they finish and fall for the year to continue to grow further. And they can grow all the way through starting late winter and stretch out further than they would if you planted them in the spring once everything starts budding out. So it's still the best time for planting, and it was the time we used to plant all the time. If you think about plants that you're putting in pots and say, well, it's in a pot that's 12 inches diameter, it's got 6 inches of root. If I give it even 1 inch more root in the fall growing, it actually ends up getting it more than doubles the amount of area that the roots can draw water from. And that happens very quickly in the fall. When we dig things up, which we do a lot, right? These are new roots. And that's about 2 days worth of root growth on a young pine tree. That's an incredible extension happening very quickly as the starches come down and are socked away in new cells and between the cells in the roots. So in the fall, try to get some water to the plants that you put in fairly new and would like to get going. I'm silly as it seems, my little tiny pagoda dogwood that I showed you earlier this year, I'm still going out and pouring water on it. It's not going to show me any more growth on the top, but it's growing like crazy underneath. And I'm making sure as I water that I water wider as I do, because where the water is, more roots can grow. And those more roots, even if it's an inch spread, is quite a bit. Okay, let's see. I should scroll down here through the chat and see what everybody else has put up. Please remember that today, because I am by myself, Steve's under the weather today, and Sonia's not available. It would be nice to have another voice, so go ahead and raise your hand if you've got a question. Nancy says she just tosses her blackberry lily seeds wherever. Yep, that's definitely there. You've probably heard about Marjorie Fisher, Marjorie. A famous gardener in England used to go through people's gardens, and there is a plant called Eryngium or sea holly. There's a biennial form of the sea holly. It's got prickly leaves, but it's just a beautiful blue flower with a ruff of prickles. They're not prickles; they're more like holly, triangular projections underneath the flower. It's people call one variety of it Marjorie Fish's ghost. Marjorie's ghost, because if she came to visit you, chances were good that she had scattered some of those seeds someplace in your garden and they were going to come up. Hi, Marilyn. I see a chat from Marilyn. Browning leaves, especially on single branches, right? It is definitely the same thing going on with the seven sun that's going on with the maples, with the Japanese maples, with the sugar maples and red maples in our neighborhood, birches, service berries. They are giving up. They've been there long enough. If you were to go up to the branch of that seven sun shrub and look to see if there's a bud where the leaf fell off, you're probably going to find that it's got buds set for next year. And what it's doing is preserving next year's growth by keeping the water in that bud. The bud has bud scales. When plants stop extending their growth in late summer, they seal up the shoot that they formed. It's all formed with leaves and stem and even flower buds, but it's not extended yet. It's not full of water. And they seal over that with specialized leaves that have resins in them. that water can't get out. So they've got a protected place in there, and they're getting rid of the leaf, which was losing water before it makes the bud lose water. So if you're worried about a plant that's losing leaves in a drought in the fall like this, take a look at the branches. If you see buds for next year, then they're okay. Okay. Do they need deep water? Yes, anything that's leaves are hanging or falling could definitely use water. It won't stop. Probably won't stop the leaves from falling that are falling, but it will allow the plant to make more root cells, to pack more water into the shoots that are ready to go for the springtime. Oh, Diane's telling us about bird migration. You might want to look in chat for that. Everybody coming through. Yeah, our hummingbird's gone, the orioles are gone. We know they must be moving someplace. And generally about now, we get cedar waxwings showing up here in big mobs, and they ought to have a good time this year because they like crabapple fruit. And a lot of the persistent fruited crab apples with the little tiny fruits are hanging onto a lot of fruit. Judith, why don't you go ahead and open up your
Oops.
microphone?
Okay. Hi, thank you.
Hi.
I just finished laying down combination grass seed and micro clover, which ended up not being overseeding, but really basically replacing the lawn. And I'm sure that I have done some things wrong, and maybe I did a few things right, but for future reference, I'd like to find out what I did wrong and what I did right. So there has been drought here in Massachusetts too, and I didn't water, and that grass was just totally yellow, and it did not look as if it was going to be coming back. And in fact, it didn't, even after I watered it. So essentially, I've raked up and used the, I'm missing the term,
A dethatching type rake?
yeah, dethatching
Hard
tool,
times.
and put down this combination of seed after putting in, and I carefully tried to make sure that the organic fertilizer that I put in was not going to burn or be a problem. So it's there too. And I've just raked it in like crazy, and a whole lot more old grass has come up too. So I'm not sure whether I just killed my preceding lawn or whether it needed to be killed anyway.
Well, you
And
may have,
also what my watering regime should be.
okay, you may have killed some of the plants, but probably what you did was dragged out the annual plants that gave up the ghost and did not come back. And what the grass that come back are is some of the perennial grass in there, because there are perennial bluegrasses, there's annual bluegrass, there's perennial
Right.
rice, and there's annual rice. So as long as your seed made good contact with the soil, and it sounds like if you dethatched first and then raked well, especially after you put the seed in to rake it, because if those little tiny seeds sit on top of a
Yeah.
old grass blade, they're not in contact with the soil. So if you raked afterwards and then you keep it moist, and in general, you want to watch for it to germinate. And once it starts to germinate, make sure you water every day to keep the top surface moist. If you can keep more than that moist, that's great. But the top surface, you don't want it to run off or flood off. You just want to keep it moist. Sometime in seeding in the fall, it's not too late now, so it should germinate. You should see a green furze all over the place. It'll take longer than it would in the spring because the days are shorter, but in 10 days you should see grass seed and clover seed coming up all over. But if you seed later, or if it stays dry, that seed may just sit there until next spring. It's called dormant seeding. And
Right.
I've seen people dormant seed even in December and then have the seed come up in the spring.
So I don't need to water until it starts to germinate?
That's right. You want to watch for it to germinate.
Okay.
If you start watering right away, you could probably get it to germinate, but do you really want it to do that? Or do you want to get a help from Mother Nature? Because you can't water like rain does. And that first rain is going to cause it to germinate. The seed won't die if it sits there. If it germinates and then doesn't get water, it'll die. But if it just sits there and waits for the first rain, then you can let Mother Nature soak the ground good, and then you can just come and keep topping it up on the top.
Great. Thank you.
You're
I
welcome.
did water today, and it's supposed to rain just a little bit here in Massachusetts tonight and tomorrow, but
We
probably
could-
not a whole lot.
Yeah, we all hope. It felt today, just a little bit today. I said, oh, it feels like there's rain someplace, but not here. Yeah. It's like to seed the clouds. We need a cannon. Every gardener needs a cannon that can blast away at the clouds. Teresa, you've got your hand up. Why don't you go ahead and talk?
Thank you.
Hi. Yep, my garden for the last 2 years, so vegetable garden has been less than desirable output. But I mean, it has been fabulous for 30 years, and the last 2 years has just been crap. But I spoke with somebody and they said to use Dairy Dew, once I pull everything out and, to maybe amend the soil. Have you ever used Dairy Dew?
I've used cow manure and I've used a lot of poultry manure, which is similar to, because Dairy Dew is made, well, the product that I know is Dairy Dew is made in someplace around Midland, Michigan.
Yes,
Something like
yep,
that, right?
that's it.
Right. So
Yep.
it's one farm's composted manure. But if you bought composted manure, it's the same thing. And I've used a lot of composted manure over the years. It's an organic form of fertilizer that's not going to burn your plants. It does have, depending on what kind of animal it came from, it does have some water soluble nitrogen in it. Chicken manure does, for instance. But sheep manure, cow manure tends to be pretty much slow release. So go ahead and mix it in. It takes more of that kind of fertilizer by weight than it does of other kinds of fertilizer. So you have to slog around a lot more bags. Sometimes,
Okay.
yeah, sometimes we would use, trying to think in my old garden. Let's say for 100 square feet, I was using almost a half a bag of dried cow manure. And that half a bag was 10 pounds, which is a lot more pounds than you put of the granulated fertilizer. It's kind of why people like the granulated fertilizer. It's more concentrated. You can get more for every pound you carry around outside, but it's not as good for the soil. So go for that because it's really in the soil.
Thank you. And to be honest, even my flowers last year they were fine, but this year almost everything seemed is the term chlorotic, where it's kind of yellow.
Yeah, there are a lot of plants this year. I'm going to say the majority of the woody plants in the gardens that I've looked at, and some of the pictures that people have sent me, pushed out a lot of growth when it was moist and cool early in the year, and couldn't sustain that. I don't think the root systems and in some cases in the developed areas in Michigan, a lot of our neighborhoods were not suitable for farming, and that's why they became a neighborhood rather than a farm. A lot of those areas didn't have enough nutrient in the soil, especially once you got halfway through summer and the life in the soil had eaten up a lot of the things in there. A lot of those plants became chlorotic because they just didn't have enough to sustain the big push they put out this spring. I think they'll be fine next year.
Okay, so in the spring when we do the fertilizing, that should kind of take care of it? Or do you recommend anything in the fall?
Well, our general pattern of fertilizing, Steve's and mine, is to use the slow release fertilizer in April and October.
Okay.
Okay,
so I should do something now.
Yeah. You definitely can. It's what nature does. It drops a lot of stuff during the off season. Not only the leaves that are falling off of trees and the seed pods and the things that are falling off of bushes and trees, but also throughout the winter, all the animals out there, and that includes the micro animals, are dropping waste, and it's not decomposing because it's not warm enough. So fertilizer builds up over the winter. Plants use it in spring, it falls down, the level falls down in summer, and then the plants that take that as a natural cue and harden off. And then in the fall, it builds up again. So spring, they're using a lot. Fall, they can use a lot. And that's when we use the slow release. Just don't use the salt-based fertilizers in the fall.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I see that David's wondering about his rhododendrons with holes in the leaves. Let's see, who makes holes in the leaves? He says they're holes in the leaves. They're not on the edge of the plant, David. They're within the body of the leaf itself. Because if they're in the body of the leaf itself, they're probably, you've got some slugs hanging around in the spring when it's time for when the leaves are still soft, the new leaves are soft on the rhododendrons, then the slugs are hatching out then, and they can make holes in those leaves, and that's what they do. They make a hole within the body of the leaf. Most of the other plant bugs, most of the other plant pests that bother rhododendrons notch the edge of the leaves or scrape the leaves or stick their feeder in and they suck moisture out and make the leaves have a mottled look to them. But if you've got holes, they're probably just some slugs in the springtime when the leaves are soft, and a slug bait. Lori was asking about that too on her. Oh, okay, we'll get onto the edges of the leaf in a minute here. But if it is slugs, now is not the time to try to kill slugs. Most of the slugs that are out there right now are old slugs, as in mature slugs. It's hard to kill them. They can eat some of those sluggos and they'll stop eating for a while, but they don't die. What you want to do is wait until the springtime, and in the area where you think you have a problem with slugs, clean the mulch out of that area, leave it dry and exposed in the springtime, except for where you put down, I know nobody's getting newspapers anymore, but I still collect them. Put down a section of newspaper, just open it up like somebody was reading it and lay it down on the ground, or a piece of cardboard. And then make sure that it's out there at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The next day, flip it over and you'll find there are slugs hiding under it because there's no place else. There's no mulch for them to hide under, and the plants aren't up yet. This is in April. And you can kill the slugs that are there, or if it's newspaper, you can flip it over, rip off a piece of paper that's got the little slugs on it and throw it away. But what you want to get are the ones that overwinter and come up in early April, because they're going to lay 30 to 50 eggs a piece. And then those next generation are also going to lay 30 to 50 a piece. Now that the holes on the edge of the leaves are a different matter. On the edges of the leaves, that's almost always on rhododendrons, it's almost always weevils. And weevils are not just eating the leaves of the plant, they're laying eggs at the end of the summer. They're laying eggs in the soil, and the grubs that emerge, the larval form of those weevils, eat the roots of the plant all winter and cause it to dry out. So if you've got notching on the edges of the leaves of a rhododendron, of a burning bush, there's about 100 different species they eat, which is what makes the black vine weevil and the strawberry root weevil so dangerous for a garden. Then you want to start thinking about controlling weevils. And I'm going to ask you to take a look at my website, because they're difficult to control, because they're the worst of them, this black vine weevil, is not native. It was attacked with just about all kinds of insecticides when it first showed up in the country, in the southeast and mid-east Atlantic coast. It worked its way across the whole country, and as it was working its way across, it developed a resistance to almost everything. So if you're trying to kill them right now, after a good rain, beneficial nematodes that eat black vine weevil grubs, you can release them into the soil, scatter them on the soil, water them in. It comes as a powder. You buy it from organic pest control supplies like, I'm going to do it again. I always forget the name of the place that we order from. Arbico, A-R-B-I-C-O, Arbico Organics is who we order from, but there are other places that sell beneficial nematodes. Right now is the time to release them into the soil, because the new grubs are young, easier to kill than next year. Next year, you have to wait until the new adults come out and kill the adults. But if you looked up black vine, as in vining plant that climbs up, black vine weevil, in a Google search or on our gardenatoz.org, you find more on that. Thanks for get well wishes for Steve there. Okay, let's see, what did I? David's also asking, what do you think of beer in a pie pan to drown slugs? If you put that bait out, a shallow container of beer does work. The slugs come into it and they drown in it. And when you get dead slugs, they attract more slugs. There's something about the smell of dead slugs. So you can end up with big pans full of slugs if you do that in the middle of the summer. If you do it in the spring, when there are fewer slugs, you're doing some great work But if you do it in the summer, you're just creating kind of a magnet for more slugs to move into whatever area you've got that in there. Okay, I'm going to. Oh, green weevils. Let's see, what is the green weevil called? Diane's saying she's got damage from weevils on her cherry tree or Fothergilla. What is that green weevil called? There are a lot of weevils, like beetles, are a big group of plants. Big group of plants. I'm gonna go backwards because I can't remember how to get there otherwise. There we go. Weevils of all kinds eat things. Many of them are less dangerous because they are, oh, I know, peach. It's the peach leaf weevil probably working on your Fothergilla or your cherry tree. And most of the weevils are specific to a group of plants. They eat that plant or they eat those seeds of that plant. Whereas black vine weevil eats a lot of things, well over 100 species of plants in a lot of different families. And that makes it much more dangerous than some of the other types of weevils. Priscilla is talking, Priscilla is recommending ammonia, a 10% ammonia solution, which is 1 part of ammonia, 9 parts of water in late March on the soil. Ammonia is going to add some nitrogen to the soil. Generally won't burn at that level, but it can help, it can kill slug eggs. With slugs, it doesn't actually kill them. It dissolves the shell on the slug, on the egg, which effectively kills the slug inside. Why did I go back to this? Didn't mean to go back to that. Hollytone is a slow release fertilizer. Yes. How do we know it's a slow release fertilizer? Somebody else want to answer that in chat? Lots of black spots for the green beetle. Well, okay. Back to weevils for a second here. Elizabeth's wondering whether it's lime green, a millimeter, and pear-shaped. Most weevils appear to be pear-shaped because they have a snout. Think of weevils as the anteater of the beetle group. They have a snout that they eat through, and they're various sizes and type. And describing it just by color and size, you could be calling a whole lot of different ones, so I can't really answer that. Okay. I wanted to make sure that you knew about, there we go. Barb looked at her pictures and realized that she'd taken a picture of the boxwood tree moth, called box tree moth, on a lot of the bulletins and information about it, which came from Asia and worked its way across Europe, killing box, and is now working on ours. This is what the moth looks like. Thanks, Barb, for taking the picture. There are pictures of these in the bulletins, but it's nice to, no, it's not nice to know. It's scary to know that they're here, but it's good to know that you can actually find them and see them. The caterpillar, fully grown, this one looks like a pretty fully grown one, is about 1.5 inches long. It would stretch out over maybe 3 or 4 boxwood leaves, which are 1/2 inch long or so. And there can be 3 generations of them a year, and they overwinter as caterpillars. So the caterpillars themselves are someplace in the ground, in the soil, and they're older caterpillars, which are not eating, so it's very difficult to kill them. We have several ways to kill plants with bugs. We have physical ways where, for instance, if you put that ammonia on a soft-bodied slug, insect like this, or a slug, or diatomaceous earth, you actually end up drying out the skin, the exoskeleton, which is their skeleton. And if that dries out and cracks, you got a dead bug because they can't go anywhere. So that's physically killing them. You can also physically kill them with oil. If I spray an oil solution on them, it plugs up the holes in their skeleton that they breathe through, because they don't breathe through their mouth and lungs like we do, and it can smother them. So I can have physical ways of killing them. I can also have edible. I can kill them through their gut, get them to eat something that kills them, and that works with things like everything from BT, which is an organic bacteria that kills bugs, to some of the more potent 7s and etc. that when they eat them poisons them on the inside. And there were a group of chemicals called neurotoxins that worked by either interrupting or totally frying the nerve system. Most of those nerve toxins are gone, which is a good thing. But you get an old bug like this, it's harder to kill because it's got a harder exoskeleton. They're bigger, they can handle more damage, so it's better to wait and get them in the spring when they come back out again. And when the little ones hatch from the eggs that they lay as moths. Okay. What else we got? No hands up here. Okay, so anyway, Barb took that picture, but also said, and by the way, I found a black swallowtail. No, it was Kristen who found a black swallowtail caterpillar on her parsley. She said, I brought him in, and then I thought maybe I shouldn't do that because it's getting to be the end of the year. Right. If you're raising caterpillars to be butterflies and you're trying to get more of them in your yard, take a look when you get them and you figure out which kind they are. Take a look at what their life cycle is. In the butterfly guides, that life cycle will be there. And black swallowtails, for instance, don't migrate like monarchs do. They overwinter as pupa. There is one of the pupa chrysalises of a black swallowtail. It went into, let's see, this spruce was probably 15, 20 feet away from the dill plants that it was eating. It crawled away, found a place that it seemed safe, attached its webbing, and it'll spend the winter there, and then it will emerge. It'll pop open when there's enough accumulated heat. So sometime in the spring, it'll come out. If you bring that one inside and keep that chrysalis inside, it won't get the cold that tells it to wait, and you'll have a butterfly in the house during the winter that won't do anything. So if you bring something inside and it overwinters naturally, then take it back outside after it gets big enough to make a chrysalis and put it in your garage. And I used to put them in jars in my garage, and then I would end up finding a dead butterfly inside the jar because I forgot to go and look for them in the spring. But you do need to protect them in some way, even if they can come out, because chipmunks and mice get into and take those kinds of things in the wintertime. And all of that's in the butterfly guides, like the Audubon guide, the Peter's guide to the butterflies. I have quite a bunch of them. In fact, I was looking at mushrooms this year. Let's see. Oh, nature is a beautiful place. I was talking to Chuck Martin, who's going to be on our next webinar, beginning of October. And it is glorious to talk to someone who understands how privileged we are to be outside in contact with nature. I mean, just absolutely the best place to be in any kind of world. Matt sent in a picture of this. He says, is this chicken of the woods? I love some of the names of these mushrooms. Chicken of the woods. I said, well, it could be. I know for sure. Oh dear. Huh. That's very strange. The picture didn't show up there. I know chicken of the woods, bona fide chicken of the woods that I've seen is more roughly than this and tends to be on dead logs. I said, it's possible that you've got turkey tail. Oh, and the picture didn't come up. Okay, that's terrible. Well, there was supposed to be a picture right where I'm seeing gray, and I don't know why my computer worked with it that way. But I took out one of my mushroom guides, which took me a while to find because they were hidden under coloring books. Having grandkids around is good. And after I opened it up on my lap, looking to look at the differences between turkey tail and chicken of the woods, I found my black pants that I'm wearing were covered with dust. I said, oh, I guess it's time to dust the bookshelves, which means that at the end of the year, I have a goal, get the guard closed up and start dusting the books. Oh, you guys are good. Everybody's taking care of. Yes, what are those orange things? The orange things on that caterpillar were, I thought they were fright horns. I thought they were a visual, scary thing. It was my kids who told me when we started raising those, and they would tap the caterpillar to get it, spread those out. The kids who have much more sensitive noses and are closer to the caterpillar informed me that they stink. They smell terrible. So it isn't necessarily the visual effect, but the stink that would chase something away and keep them from being eaten. When do you kill the Bach moth caterpillars in the spring? If you look online, Cornell, for instance, has a Cornell extension, has a list of these are the things that work on the caterpillars. I think Michigan State is working on one now. Ohio State has one, quite a nice, well illustrated bulletin that at the end gives you a list of things you can use. Some of them are available only to commercial applicators, but you'll find several there that you can use, including 7. The problem is just that you have to watch where the caterpillars, you can't just spray them, spray that stuff and have it work. It has to contact the caterpillars, so they have to be there for you to kill them. And that's, and the fact that you have to watch 2 or 3 times a year for the next generation to come out. Thank you, Jean, for reminding me that I should tell people about next week, the 25th, the Thursday. Jean can tell me for sure. Oh no, it's Wednesday. Wednesday at 6 o'clock at the Blair Memorial Library in Clawson. We're going to talk about cleaning up the garden in the fall. It's supposed to be me and Steve. Let's cross my fingers that Steve will be up to it, but it'll definitely be me for sure, because I am not sick and not going to get sick. Let's see. Yeah. And actually, I think that Diana's talking about Joe Boggs in Ohio having a good box tree moth box tree moth article. I was calling that a bulletin, but it is Joe Boggs' illustrated article that'll come up. It's worth looking at. Definitely worth looking at. Let me tell you a little bit about Nancy. No, Dee's Rose. I think it's worth looking at this time of year at roses that didn't perform well. If it fails to bloom, I think the rose should be compost. So these roses, there are a couple of them here in the garden that Dee is taking care of, did not bloom. And she has done various things to them this year, different fertilizers that she's used. They were eaten by deer, but she thinks that they were okay afterwards. And they still haven't bloomed. Well, I looked, oh, that's right. I forgot to magnify it for you. Well, I'll have to just kind of point with my hand or pointer here. Do you see the red new growth? It's normal for a rose, especially in the cool weather, to develop its new growth. It's red, and then it turns green afterwards. In the heat of summer, a rose that's got a lot of red foliage, red new foliage on it, particularly when some of that foliage right here are divided, almost ferny looking leaflets, you probably have rosette virus going on in the plant. That's weakening the whole plant. It's not going to help it make new flower buds when they're getting killed like that. And when I zoomed in on this, which I'm sorry that I forgot to go into Photoshop and crop so that you could see it, there are several places here that appear to have been browsed. Somebody's still coming in and eating the new growth, and deer and rabbits like new growth. They like the soft, tender buds, just like I like the budded broccoli, buds of broccoli. I don't like it when they start opening. They taste bitter once they start opening. So I think you still have deer browse going on, Dee, and I think that you've got a weak plant. And to me, I would say pull the plant, get some new virus-free plants. So the virus does not live in the soil. It lives in roses, and it comes back into the garden from infected roses nearby. The roses that grow wild in our fields all through the Midwest, the multiflora roses, and tangle things up. They're terrible to walk through. Multiflora roses are typhoid Marys. They carry it. Insects that suck on plants, suck on those plants, and come over to your plants and transfer the virus to yours. And it's a nasty virus, and it gets worse year by year. You get more and more danger. But in the middle of summer, when I see that much red on a rose, I start thinking that, looking for the other symptoms of rosette. Diatomaceous earth on the ground where the caterpillars lived at, Diane, Suzanne's asking. Sure, if you know where they live. Diatomaceous earth is ground, it's marine crustaceans, shells, tiny creatures, diatoms, and these are collected. They're very sharp, abrasive. In fact, there's a EPA warning on them. If you buy diatomaceous earth in quantity, it'll say, do not use this in a closed area. Don't inhale this. It's going to hurt you to do that. So diatomaceous earth, if an insect crawls across it and gets it on its body, can irritate it or
Look at that.
there we go. Diatomaceous earth, though, if they don't crawl across it, it doesn't bother them. And if it gets wet, then there's You know how they tell you that in the first 20 minutes of a rain, you can slide off the road because the water beads up on the top? The water beads up on top of diatomaceous earth, and the small insects can just crawl right across in a skim of water. So it's not something you can put down and say, there, that's done. You have to know that the insects are there. Like you put it around the base of the plants that you think they're going to crawl up, and then you come and you do that again. Or you sprinkle it into the plant, like on hostas, so that it's on the stem and the leaves of the hosta as they're crawling up, they get it on their body. I hope that makes sense, and I hope that works. Michelle, do you want to, oh, sorry, Nancy's in line first. Nancy, go ahead and unmute and tell us what it is that you want to talk about. Oh, Nancy's microphone is still off. I can't turn your microphone on from here, Nancy. So if you've got something to say, go ahead and say it.
There we go.
There we
Okay.
are.
So
Okay.
I kept pressing the button and then would remute me. Okay,
Oh.
so two questions. One, will systemic insecticide work on the box tree moth?
It will work
Caterpillars.
on the box tree moth once it begins eating your plant. Systemic insecticides have to be taken up by the plant. Now the leaves are toxic, and the insects that eat them can get enough of it to kill themselves, but there's still going to be some damage to your plant. You're also going to be killing other things that are eating your boxwood, some of which maybe you don't want to kill because it's this pollen that's toxic. So think about when you do that, that it may have a wider effect than you want to have, but it does work.
Okay, and the second question, is it too late, or when is a good time to kill magnolia scale? Is it too late to use neem oil on them?
Right now there are probably crawlers out. Okay, magnolia scale has a different life cycle than most of the scales on woody plants. Most of the scales on woody plants die at the end of the year, and underneath the cover of the dead scale, which had stuck itself onto the branch as a little bump, underneath the dead scale's shell are the eggs. In the spring, as the plant leaves out, the scale eggs hatch and attach themselves to the new growth and start sucking it, and they get bigger and bigger and become the next adults. Magnolia scales live through the winter, eat again in the spring, and the new crawlers come out in August. They're out now, they're moving around, and they might still be soft enough to kill with oil. But normally you aim for them in August, so it might be a little bit too late. With a microscope or a good lens, you could see whether they're crawling around and attaching themselves to the small twigs.
Because there is so much scale on this magnolia. I was just wondering, is it anything I can do now or no?
Yes, there are. When the leaves fall, take a hose on a jet with a gun that you can set to jet, so you've got some force, and hose off the branches, knock a bunch of those scale off, and then next summer, especially in July, start hosing the plant down again. Just water can do a lot toward knocking the smaller adults and the crawlers off. You can also release ladybugs. Ladybugs eat their way through scale, but they like the young scale, so you want to release the ladybugs in August too. But right now, getting the adult scales off of the stems is the way to do it. You probably can't use systemic on them now because the plant is not taking up enough and incorporating it into the sap that's coming up from the roots. So systemic, you'd have to wait until next year too.
Thank you.
Sure. Michelle, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I just have a quick question. I know that I have black vine weevil,
I
and
think most of
they
us
are
do.
a
Yeah.
pain. Does that mean all the black vines, no, black weevils that I see with snouts, do you think every black bug like that I see, I should just kill? I
Yeah.
see them running in the dirt and I
Yeah, I
kill it.
would. I would. There are probably weevils that are good guys. There's certainly some weevils that are predatory weevils, but most of the good guys would be few in number. There's an entomologist told me once that if I see one of them, you can bet that there's 30 to 50 of them that you didn't see. So when you see a bunch of them, you have you have something that is think of it as gazelles versus lions. You get a lot more gazelles in a herd than you get in lions. So if you see a bunch, then they're fair game to kill. They must be a plant eater.
Thanks.
Thank you. It's nice to have other voices here. And let's see if I look at. Don't let your dog eat the jack in the pulpit. Actually, all parts of it are poisonous, but mostly it's the root, the tuber that it grows from. And the Native Americans called it memory root because you remembered not to chew that again. It has oxalic acid crystals in the, I hope I've got that right, of what chemical composition they are, but they're crystals that are very sharp and they burn. So as soon as you bite it, you would find that out. Dogs, I hope they're black labs that you've got that are doing that, because they eat first and ask questions later, but they still do learn. I want to take you to end up today, and I'll have to look through the chat and see what I need to. If you put a question in chat and we haven't talked about it at all and you'd like to hear from me about it, would you please put your full name someplace in the chat as you leave, so that I'll know which Marilyn or which Barb or which person it is that I'm answering, because sometimes they're not identified very clearly. Some of you have gotten emails from me where I say, I'm not sure which Carol it is, but so I'm answering all the Carols. Okay, I quite often look to see what's already there that we can look at. And I've told you before that if you go to gardenaz.org and click on what's up, it'll take you to our news section and our archive newsletters. But I realized, because I don't use my phone very much. This week I did use my phone looking through. When it comes up then, that what's up is in a menu. You had to go through the menu and find it. And when you click on what's up, it's going to take you to something that looks like this. And with the sliding bar, scroll bar on the side, I get something that looks like this. It says, okay, here, I'm going to go to my archived editions, to the ensemble editions. For in a cell phone, and those ensemble editions, when I open them on the computer screen, they come up in by season. Right now we're in early fall, so I could click on early fall and it would give me 25 issues that we put out in early fall that have typical early fall topics. But for your cell phone, you come to the what's up page, you have to drag that scroll bar all the way down, and it's going past a lot of stuff because there's a lot of things in there in order to get to the sidebar. So drag it all the way down, then you can click on ensemble issues, and then drag it all the way down again, because there are a good 1,200 entries between the top of the page and the bottom of the page, the way that it's set up. When we set up the website, we set it up for computers. I think, when did we do this? 2011? We had cell phones, but they were flip phones. We weren't familiar with cell phones. And it was after, let's see, 2011, we started the site. No, we started earlier than that. But at any rate, our programmer said we need to reformat your site for cell phones. So they did reformat it, but this is what happens with it, is that you got to drag that bar all the way down to get to the ensemble editions, where you can then say, okay, tell me the early fall editions or the late spring editions or the late winter editions. We would have to reconfigure the site again to make it more friendly to cell phones, easier to find its way around. And I don't think we can do that. We still haven't quite finished all of the detail of changing it the last time. Those of you who are dinosaurs like we are would know that they keep changing programs so quickly that every time you want to make a change, you have to upgrade everything, and then you can't programmatically change it. You have to change it manually. So if you go in and you go into the seasons, doing what I told you there, just drag the bar all the way down. Go to what's up from the main menu, drag that bar all the way down. Look, drag the next bar on ensemble editions all the way down, and that will take you to the seasons. And then when you click those seasons, you'll get a list of things that you can click on. It'll take you, for instance, to in late winter, it'll take you to one of the articles that tells you how to tell what the buds look like. These are the buds that I'm explaining to you that are setting themselves up to stay moist inside that bud scales all winter long. And as long as a bud is there where a leaf fell off, your plant is still alive and still gonna try to come back for you. When I looked at number 157 from early fall, it tells me a list of the topics that are in there. Scabby potatoes, nut trees, etc. And you can then download and read, or just read the issue online if you want to. Once you look at the PDF, it tells you the pages that you go to learn about nut trees. That was fun. We went up to Owasso and worked with, I've forgotten the name of the tree farm, nut tree farm. It'll come back to me in a minute here. But chestnuts are quite edible, hard to get into, but quite edible. We can grow filberts, which are hazelnuts. They're native here. We could grow walnuts. We can eat chestnuts. Acorns of various kinds. So it's fun to look at that. Oikos tree crops. I think the owner retired, so Oikos is not there anymore. But Nash tree farm in Owasso specializes in nut trees, which is really nice. And we put in an article in that one about the bumper crops, because this is the time of year where if you live under oak trees and it's an oak acorn year, you sometimes have to wear a hard hat to work around. Nobody knows why exactly it is that they do that, but we, being curious people, we look into those kinds of things. So this is this is what we recommend you do if you're just looking in general for what's going on this time of year. If you are looking for a specific thing like watering schedule or black pine, we will put that into search. Well, thank you for being here. And I will stay and walk through the chat before I take the recording off so that I can remember who to answer for what. But I appreciate your being here, and I appreciate your good wishes to Steve. I'll convey those to him. He's stretched out in his lounge chair asleep. And we'll be here next Friday. Let's see, we get back to there. Nut trees. Pruning roses. People always ask about how to prune, especially how to prune climber roses, and we have whole how-to in there. And why they grow better if you twist them around a little bit. Scabby potatoes, problems with celery, how many grubs per inch your lawn can take. Cutting things back hard, go ahead, cut them back, even when other things are still blooming. Taking care of iris borer problems, iris borer moth, tent caterpillars, where they are this time of year, late bloomers. Every time I look these up, I go, God, I can't believe how much stuff we put in a week, what was a weekly newsletter. So there's a lot there, and it's easier to find it by looking it up by season. Just a little hard to find the seasons listings. So we'll watch the sunset again. And head off into the sunset. Hope yours isn't too rocky. That's all for number 19 of Free for All Friday. September 27th is our next time to be here. We generally get in most of the questions that people email or text us by sometime on Thursday. We usually get those in on Friday. We just put them in as we go along and then tell you what the topics were this week. Okay, I am going to sit and try to be quiet and read what happened in chat here that I missed. Jean, you're wondering about taking perennials up north and planting them and leaving them over the winter. Still better off than doing it in the spring, yes. Even if you can't be up there to water again, if you wait until it begins to get moist and plants, the tops are not going to grow back again, then even putting it into a relatively dry ground is still going to insulate it better than it would be otherwise. And every time that there is some rain, it's going to be able to use that. So it's still good to do it in the fall, even when it happens to be a little bit dry, even if you can't get up to water. Diana's wondering about which kind of grass seed mix to use. I was explaining to Judith that there's annual and perennial fescues. I like, for a low maintenance lawn, I like the tall fescues. They're rougher looking grass. It's not so mossy, velvety green looking because the blades are wider on the tall fescues, but they are very drought tolerant. They're disease resistant. So if people tell me, I say get a fescue mix that has tall fescue in it, and that's literally its name, tall fescue. There's red fescues and chewings, fescues. I think it's called. Why can't I scroll up? There we go. Do you use food grade diatomaceous earth? I don't know food grade diatomaceous earth at all, so I can't even answer that. I always bought it as a toxin, as a pesticide. Yeah, Maryland, those poor boxwoods, and a lot of people are doing that. I'm just, it's kind of like me and roses. Once rosette virus moved in, I said, I'm just not going to do roses for the most part. It's too much fighting. I don't like fighting the garden. I like letting things grow and just helping them along a little bit. I'm not sure whether separating plants, Maryland, is going to work, because I know that the rosette moved all the way across the country. That one started in the Pacific Northwest and moved its way across country, and it did it by the insects that suck on the plants in the wild areas and move them into other areas. So I'm not sure just separating them with one shrub or another might be a place for predatory insects to get them as they go back and forth. Trace has a bunch of tunnel spiders in her boxwood bushes. Are they going to eat the pet? Well, spiders are pretty indiscriminate in what they eat. Whether they will eat the as far as I know, spiders will eat anything that they can catch a hold of. There's probably some insects that don't taste good to them, but I wouldn't know what it is. I know that Sonia and Steve, when Sonia was young, caught about 30 flies one after another and kept throwing them into anything that was flying, actually, and kept throwing them into a spider web, and the spider accepted every one of them. But I don't know for sure. That's a good thing to look into. And Hollytone is a slow release fertilizer. How do I know a slow release fertilizer? That'll be a good one for next week. Reading the label, it'll tell me that I have, what does it say? It's terrible. Oh, it's called water insoluble nitrogen. Water insoluble nitrogen. And it'll tell you what percent of the nitrogen in that bag is water insoluble. So if I get a Hollytone that says that it's 555, flip it over and look at the label. The label will say that 4% of that is water insoluble. That makes it a slow release fertilizer. So 1% of its nitrogen is going to dissolve and be available right away. The rest is going to take its time to break down in the microbiome of the soil. Okay, I think we're all right then. So that gives me an idea what to seed into next week. And I don't see anything else here that we haven't done before. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Have a great weekend. Pray for rain.